Tony Danza blocked the wedding everyone wanted to see. For 8 whole seasons, fans waited for Tony and Angela to finally marry. But in 2024, Danza admitted the real reason he said no. It wasn't about keeping the show interesting. It was about money, syndication profits, and a choice that damaged real friendships behind the camera. His co-star Judith Light was frustrated for years, but that wasn't the biggest secret he kept. The truth about what happened on set involved lawsuits, affairs, and a near-death accident that almost ended everything. Tony Danza was born on April 21, 1951, in Brooklyn, New York. His real name was Antonio Salvatore Danza. His mother, Anne, came from Sicily in 1929, with 5 siblings. His father, Matty, worked as a garbage man and barely made enough to keep the family going. They lived in East New York, one of the roughest parts of Brooklyn. Tony grew up surrounded by street fights and crime. Some people believed his father's job was a cover and that he had secret ties to local mob families. They lived in a small apartment, always watching their backs. When Tony was 14, the family moved to Malvern, Long Island. It was a big change. The new neighborhood was quieter, but Tony didn't fit in. He was bullied in school for his Brooklyn accent and his Italian last name. Kids called him names like Wop and Guinea. Teachers didn't believe in him. They said he was a bad student, but Tony shocked everyone when he scored nearly perfect on the SAT. At school, he survived not with books, but with his fists. He got into fights all the time, and that's how people started respecting him. He finished high school in 1968, not because he was great in class, but because no one wanted to mess with him. Tony had a younger brother named Matty Jr., who was born in 1954. The two brothers were very close. Their father was unpredictable and sometimes violent. In 1962, Matty Sr. once threatened a neighbor with a bat over something as small as a fence. The boys were told never to touch the strange packages their father brought home. They later found out those packages were linked to his side dealings with local gangs. To help the family, Tony and his brother started working when they were 12. Tony delivered newspapers. Matty Jr. shined shoes outside clubs, where shady men in suits came and went. At age 15, Tony's father took him to a gym. He hoped boxing would give Tony a better outlet for his anger. In his first fight, Tony knocked the other boy out so badly he had to be taken to the hospital with a broken jaw. People started calling him Dangerous Tony Danza. In 1975, his friends entered him in the New York Golden Gloves tournament as a joke. He shocked everyone by knocking out 6 guys in a row, all in the first round. He lost in the finals, but by then everyone in the boxing scene knew his name. From 1976 to 1979, he fought professionally. He won 9 fights, lost 3. All his wins were knockouts. 7 happened in the first round. All 3 of his losses were also knockouts. He was either going to win big or go down fast. As he got older, Tony admitted something he had hidden for years. He said his father probably worked for the mob, helping them with garbage routes and getting rid of things they didn't want found. He said he always feared his dad might vanish like other fathers in their neighborhood. On Pitkin Avenue, where Tony grew up, big crime bosses like Joseph Ida operated. It was the kind of place where you didn't ask questions about what your dad did after dark. Tony later said that acting like a tough guy on screen wasn't an act. It was how he survived childhood. Tony also struggled in school because of something no one understood back then. He had dyslexia. Reading was hard, and teachers thought he was just lazy. He failed 3rd grade. It stayed with him for life. When he later became a teacher himself, he said he could always spot kids like him, the ones who felt dumb because no one helped them learn the right way. The failure in school gave him a deep fear that he wasn't smart enough, and it took years to shake that feeling. In high school, things got harder. He was one of the only Italian kids in a mostly white school. There was tension. During one attack, he was jumped by several students and ended up with a broken nose. But he turned his pain into strength on the wrestling mat. He got so good that he won a full scholarship to the University of Dubuque in Iowa. He planned to study history and become a teacher, but college was no escape. The wrestling team had cruel, hazing rituals. One left him bruised and shaken. He was homesick. He missed his mom, especially the way she comforted him. After just one semester, he dropped out and went back to Brooklyn. That decision would change everything. In Brooklyn, he picked up odd jobs, moving furniture, delivering food. But nothing stuck. Then, in 1975, he entered the ring again. On August 13, 1976, he knocked out Earl Harris in the first round. He had gone pro, but behind the scenes, boxing was rotten. Mobsters ran the show. Big names like Frankie Carbo and Blinky Palermo fixed fights. Promoters told fighters who would win, who would lose. Tony saw how corrupt it was. Judges gave wins to the wrong guys. The mafia paid Carbo's wife $45,000 a year just to pretend to be involved. Danza realized he could never get far if he didn't play along. He hated that. Still, he kept fighting. In 1976, he was knocked out badly by John Lo Cicero. His eye got so damaged that he almost lost his career. He needed emergency surgery. But in 1977, he came back. He was knocked down twice in the first round, but still knocked out Rafael Garcia. That same year, casting directors noticed him. That fight helped him land his role in Taxi. He had no idea then that this was the beginning of a whole new life. His last fight was in Phoenix on May 14, 1979. He won by knockout. But even with 9 wins, he had little to show for it. He was promised $15,000 for that last fight, but most of it was stolen by crooked managers. He realized the truth. In boxing, the people around you get rich, while you're the one taking punches. That's when he packed his bags and left for Los Angeles. He had no plan, just the hope that maybe acting could save him from the mess boxing left behind. It was 1978 when a young boxer named Tony Danza got discovered by chance at a gym on 30th Street and 8th Avenue in New York. A casting agent saw something in his face, something real, and offered him a role on a new TV show. That one moment pulled Tony out of the boxing ring and dropped him into the bright lights of Hollywood. The show was called Taxi, and by the time it premiered that September, everything began to change. The series became a hit almost instantly. It ran on ABC from 1978 to 1982. Then NBC picked it up from 1982 to 1983. It won 18 Emmy Awards from 34 nominations. And for Tony, it brought a Golden Globe nomination in 1980. He was no longer just a boxer. Now he was famous. Even while filming Taxi, Tony kept boxing. In 1978 and 1979, he scored knockouts. But when a title shot didn't come, he knew it was time to choose. He walked away from the ring and leaned fully into acting. It wasn't easy, but Taxi made him a household name. Then in 1981, he took a chance on a movie called Going Ape. It was supposed to be funny. Tony played a man who had to take care of 3 chimpanzees to claim a $5 million inheritance. But the film flopped badly. Critics hated it. Audiences stayed away. It was a low point. Danny DeVito, his Taxi co-star, even got a Razzie nomination for it. For a while, Tony's film career was stuck. During his time on Taxi, Tony worked closely with Andy Kaufman, who played Latka. Andy wasn't like anyone else. He rarely told normal jokes and stayed in character, even when the cameras stopped rolling. Tony later said he admired Andy's strange brilliance, even if it made things hard on set. And while Andy was wrestling Jerry Lawler in what the world thought was real, Tony just kept showing up to work, trying to keep the show steady. When Taxi ended in 1983, Tony knew he had to find something fast or risk fading out. Just 1 year later, in 1984, he landed the lead role on Who's the Boss? He played Tony Michelli, a retired baseball player who becomes a housekeeper. It felt like a risk, but the show became a hit and stayed on the air until 1992. Over 8 seasons and 196 episodes, it made him a bigger star than ever. He earned 3 more Golden Globe nominations and became one of the most recognizable faces on television. Behind the scenes, though, things weren't so smooth. In 1987, Tony was sued by a stand-in actress from Who's the Boss? She said she was fired after ending things with his brother, Matty. The case dragged his family into the spotlight. Tony's personal life also saw struggles. His first marriage to Rhonda Yeoman ended in 1974 after he admitted cheating during his boxing years. They had a long and bitter custody fight over their son, which lasted until 1980. They briefly reunited in 1983, had a daughter, then split again. In 1986, Tony married Tracy Robinson. They had 2 daughters, Catherine and Emily. But by 2006, the marriage was falling apart. Rumors spread that Tony had cheated with a Who's the Boss co-star. Tracy found messages and hotel receipts. The couple separated in 2006, but the divorce wasn't finalized until 2013. Reports said the settlement was worth over $15 million. Friends said Tony's infidelities, some with production assistants, some with restaurant workers, were too much to overlook. As Who's the Boss became a top 10 show from 1985 to 1989, Tony's salary grew fast. By season 3, he was earning $100,000 per episode. He had so much influence that he blocked a marriage storyline between Tony and Angela because he thought it would ruin the show's tension. He was right. Ratings stayed strong, and the show ranked number 6 overall in season 4. He also negotiated for producer credits and syndication points, earning millions long after the show ended. His net worth eventually reached $40 million. But then came December 31st, 1993. Tony was skiing backwards in Utah at 50 miles per hour when he crashed into a tree. The accident was brutal. His L4 vertebra shattered, 8 ribs broke, 1 lung collapsed, and his liver and kidneys were bleeding. A 3.5-hour surgery saved him. They put a steel rod in his spine. He couldn't feel his legs for weeks. Doctors weren't sure he'd ever walk again. He needed 11 surgeries over 2 years and became addicted to painkillers during recovery. Production on Who's the Boss paused for months. Tony went quiet, but he came back. What most people didn't know was that the chemistry between Tony and Judith Light was real. They liked each other, but ABC made it clear, no off-screen romance. So they kept it professional. Their first kiss on screen didn't happen until season 3, and even then, it was Angela who kissed Tony. That tension helped make the show work. Director Asad Khalada once said their different acting styles brought out something special. By 1990, Tony wanted the show to get more serious. He pushed to include a storyline where his character reveals a history of childhood abuse drawn from his own painful past. ABC said no at first, but Tony insisted. He won. The episode aired, and thousands of letters poured in from viewers who saw themselves in the story. Critics were unsure, but audiences loved it. As the show neared its end in 1992, Tony demanded a cliffhanger ending to set up a movie. He asked for $2 million and producer credit for a film continuation. ABC said no. The finale aired as planned, and the fallout was bitter. Tony was blacklisted from ABC projects for years. Industry insiders blamed him for being difficult, and doors started closing. In 1995, he tried to bounce back with a new show called Hudson Street. It started strong with 23.4 million viewers, helped by airing between Roseanne and Home Improvement. But ratings dropped to 6.8 million by February 1996. ABC moved it to Saturday nights, the so-called death slot, and canceled it after 22 episodes. Then, in 1997, NBC gave him another chance with the Tony Danza Show. It lasted only 5 episodes before it was canceled. Even though he won a People's Choice Award for it, the show couldn't hold an audience. 9 episodes were never even aired. In 2000, he tried drama with Family Law. He played an attorney and earned praise. But the stress of flying between New York and Los Angeles took a toll. After 2 seasons, he quit. He later said the constant flying triggered a midlife crisis. After that, Tony found something unexpected: Broadway. In 2004, he starred in The Producers, both in New York and Las Vegas. People were surprised. The tough guy from Brooklyn could sing and dance. But after breaking his back in 1993, he had made a promise to himself. If he survived, he'd chase his childhood dream. And now, he was doing it. Then came one of the most honest things he ever did. In 2010, he starred in a reality show called Teach Tony Danza. He taught 10th grade English at a high school in Philadelphia. He cried on camera. He struggled to control the classroom. At one point, producers wanted to fake drama. Tony refused. They stopped filming. But he kept teaching for the rest of the year and even gave graduation speeches. He later said it was the hardest job he ever had. In 1998, his mother Anne died from cancer. He wasn't with her in her final days. The guilt crushed him. He fell into depression for more than a year. He blamed himself for her stress. In interviews, he even admitted that when he crashed in 1993, he had been thinking about her. In 2014, his brother Matty died from a heart attack. They hadn't spoken for 6 months. Tony had found out Matty forged his signature on a $200,000 loan. Matty had over $500,000 in gambling debt. Tony had bailed him out before, but this time he cut ties. Matty died alone, and Tony didn't even know until 3 days later. Tony hit his lowest point in 2003. He was arrested for DUI with a blood alcohol level of 0.18. It wasn't his first time. He had previous arrests in 1999 and 2001. He said he was drinking 2 bottles of wine a day. Then, in 2005, his son had a child. Holding his granddaughter made something click. He went to rehab and has stayed sober since. Tony Danza got married for the first time in 1970. He was just 19 when he married Rhonda Yeoman. A year later, in 1971, they had a son named Mark. But behind the scenes, everything was already falling apart. Tony was young, famous, and deep into boxing and partying. By 1974, Rhonda filed for divorce after learning about his many affairs. In court, both sides made harsh claims. Tony was accused of gambling and cheating, while Rhonda was accused of using substances. What followed was a brutal custody fight that didn't end until 1980. It lasted 6 full years and drained both of them emotionally and financially. Tony paid more than $10,000 every month in child support and alimony, huge money for the time. Then something no one expected happened. In 1983, Tony and Rhonda got back together briefly. That reunion didn't last long, but it led to the birth of their daughter Gina. Less than a year later, they split again. The cycle of breaking up and making up only added to the emotional chaos. Tony tried to focus on acting, but trouble followed him. In 1984, 2 days before the premiere of Who's the Boss, Tony got into a fight at a Manhattan restaurant. A security guard asked him to quiet down, and Tony hit the man so hard that the guard lost part of his hearing forever. Tony was taken to court, and the judge didn't hold back. But instead of jail, Tony got 250 hours of community service. His lawyers argued that sending him to prison would delay the show's production, and somehow the judge agreed. Tony married again in 1986. His second wife, Tracy Robinson, gave birth to 2 daughters. Catherine in 1987, and Emily in 1993. Their marriage lasted much longer, 25 years. But even that came crashing down in 2006, when Tracy found messages and hotel receipts. It turned out Tony had been seeing other women, including people he worked with on the set. She didn't file for divorce right away. They stayed in limbo for 5 more years until Tracy officially filed in 2011. Their divorce was finalized in 2013, and Tony had to pay a private settlement that insiders say was more than $15 million. In the middle of all this, Tony suffered a huge personal loss. His mother, Anne, died from cancer in 1998. She was 73 and had raised him while working as a bookkeeper after immigrating from Sicily. Tony wasn't there when she passed. He was working in Los Angeles. That guilt crushed him. He later said it caused a complete breakdown. For over a year, he couldn't function. He stopped acting, went to therapy, and even thought about ending his life. During a ski trip in 1999, still overwhelmed by grief, he crashed into a tree and broke his back. He later said he was thinking about his mom at the exact moment he lost control. As if that wasn't enough, in 2014, Tony's brother Matty died suddenly from a heart attack. He was 54. They hadn't spoken in 6 months. Tony had cut him off after finding out Matty forged his name on a $200,000 loan. Matty owned a restaurant called Matty's in LA and owed more than $500,000 in gambling debts. After his death, Tony found out Matty had been getting threats from dangerous people. Some even questioned if the stress of those threats had caused his heart to fail. Tony blamed himself again, just like he did with his mother. Tony hit his lowest point in 2003 when he was arrested for DUI in New York. Police found him unconscious behind the wheel with a blood alcohol level of 0.18, more than double the legal limit. Court files later revealed 2 earlier arrests in 1999 and 2001 that had been kept quiet. He was drinking every day, sometimes 2 bottles of wine before noon. Then, in 2005, something changed. His son Mark had a baby, and when Tony held his granddaughter for the first time, he knew he had to stop. He checked into rehab for 90 days and hasn't had a drink since. But trouble wasn't done with him. In 1987, Tony and his brother Matty were sued for $5 million by a 23-year-old actress named Dana Gordon. She had been dating Matty, and after they broke up, she said Matty harassed her for months. She claimed Tony threatened her job on Who's the Boss, and even fired her when she refused to patch things up with his brother. She lost her job the very next day, and the lawsuit revealed ugly details about how Tony used his power to protect his brother. Tony's 1993 skiing accident, the one that nearly killed him, wasn't just a random crash. Years later, he admitted it happened because he wasn't mentally okay. It was his first Christmas without his mom, and he was lost in thought. He said he felt off that day, like something bad was coming. He was speeding downhill at 50 mph when he hit a rock and slammed into a tree. His back was broken, and he needed surgery that left permanent damage. He told the story years later on TV, crying as he explained how grief had clouded his mind. In 2023, another bombshell hit when John Stamos said in his memoir that he once caught Tony in bed with his girlfriend, actress Terry Copley. It happened back in the 80s. Stamos said he pulled into her driveway, saw a strange car, looked through the window, and saw Tony in bed. He ran away crying, with Elton John's Tiny Dancer playing on the radio. The pain stuck with him for decades, and he said Tony never apologized. Instead, Tony bragged about it to friends. Money problems came next. Tony had invested $1 million into his brother's restaurant, Matty's, on Melrose Avenue. It became a hangout spot for cast parties, but the business flopped around 2005. Tony lost almost everything. He had to auction off personal items just to pay debts. The failure showed how mixing family and money had burned him again. Even on set, things weren't always smooth. In 2024, Tony admitted that he blocked the idea of his character marrying Angela on Who's the Boss? He said, if they got married, it would ruin syndication profits. That decision frustrated Judith Light and caused tension between them during filming. It wasn't just a creative choice, it was about business, and it damaged real relationships behind the scenes. He also confessed something strange about Alyssa Milano. Back when she was a teenager on the show, Tony treated her like his own daughter. He admitted to throwing out her boyfriends from the set, even though Alyssa kept telling him she already had a dad. His behavior, while meant to be protective, crossed lines and made her uncomfortable. One night in 1989, during filming, Tony had a private 2 a.m. conversation with Frank Sinatra. They had been drinking when Tony asked Frank if the smoking and drinking ever affected his voice. Sinatra took a long drag, exhaled slowly, and said, "I've never met a singer worth his set who didn't smoke 2 packs a day." That line stuck with Tony for life. In 2022, Tony refused to join a reboot of Who's the Boss? Because Katherine Helmond had died in 2019. He said, without her, the show couldn't work. But by 2024, during a stage show with Alyssa Milano in New York, he hinted that a revival might still happen in 2025. He said seeing Alyssa on Broadway reignited his interest. Sources say they've been talking behind the scenes, and he may finally be ready to bring the show back. This time, maybe for closure.